Dr. Winkelman, and I'm going to be doing a test review for your first test for Math 117. Let's first talk about the definitions that you will need to know for this test. These are some important ones that have had questions to do with them on previous exams and will probably reappear on this test. Also, about what your teacher told you in class. So let's review some of these level data things that are over here. First, start talking about nominal. Nominal level data has no ranking at all. It's stuff that has to do with separating genders, classes that a student might be taking, religion, things that you can rank, put people in, but you cannot rank these categories as one is better than the other. For instance, if you had marital status and you had single people versus married people versus divorced people, you cannot say that married people were better than single people or divorced people. So let's write down the nominal level data. One of the biggest obvious things about it is that there is no ranking and that it has to do with things such as gender, grouping people by gender, religion, things that you cannot put any kind of ranking on. Now, let's look at ordinal data. Ordinal level data has a rating system and a ranking system, but it is not really number-based. For instance, this is like whenever you would have a professor tell you to rate them as poor, fair, good, or great. Something that you could actually get an answer and rank these things out, but there's not a number assigned to it. Another thing would be is if you were looking at the builds of a person, small, medium, and large, or what kind of sodas you'd like to order, small, medium, or large. There was no way to say that that a small has some kind of number system based on it, and the gaps in between them can be fairly wide. So the ordinal level data are things like if you had a poor, fair, good, and great, but also like small, medium, and large. And you notice that there are, big differences between each of these, possibly. Now, let's look at interval level data. Interval level data is whenever you have things that do have differences between them. That every point, every little small unit of measurement actually matters. So, things like temperature, IQ, for instance, you might not think that a gap of 10 points is very large, but someone who has an IQ of 120, someone who has an IQ of 130, that is really a huge difference as far as intelligence from what we calculated by using IQ. So every point counts. For instance, negative 20 degrees is a lot colder than 0 degrees. But at the same time, the temperature 0 does not mean that there is no temperature, that is the bottom, that is the 0. There's nothing less than that, because there is. Negative numbers are less than 0, and those are negative temperatures. And IQ, even everyone would have, some kind of IQ, it wouldn't be 0. So there really is no true 0, as they say. Now, let's look at ratio level data. Let's go down. Ratio level data actually has a true 0. So these are things like height, weight, things that you can actually measure that there is a 0. So we're looking at things like height, weight, there is a true 0. The other part about this is that there is a ratio with these numbers. For instance, you can compare people who someone can lift 100 pounds and someone can lift 200 pounds, and that's a 2-to-1 ratio. So the ratio, that's something to do with it. That's important. So this kind of gives you an idea of the different types of this data. So depending on how you're talking about ranking things or separating things, how to put things in categories, it should kind of make this a little bit more simpler if you know the definition of each one. Now let's talk about some other things. There's two different types of variables, quantitative and qualitative variables. Quantitative always means counting, a number. So it would make sense that if you were to look at quantitative variables, what would they look like? Well, quantitative variables would be something that you could have a number. For instance, if you're measuring anything with numbers, like measuring numbers, levels, things like that, okay? So you can put a number on it, as I would say. I'm using the pound sign for numbers. Qualitative variables, and that's going back to some of those things that we talked about, like nominal, ordinal, those kind of data. Like, if you have qualitative variable, that would be something like, someone's religion. There's no way to put a number on that. So, like religion, sources that people are taking, gender. They might ask you, what are some examples of each? Well, there's a way to come up with some quantitative things, some kind of number system. Qualitative, you can list some of the ones that I have here. Now, let's move on to what they talk about descriptive stats and inferential stats. Okay? Descriptive stats are things that you will have collected the data, organized the data, and made a summary. They are stating facts, so I'm going to put it like that. They state facts. For instance, very important statistic for college-age students is that you have 1 out of 5 or 4, depending on who you talk to, women be sexually assaulted in their lifetime. So that is stating the fact. I'll just kind of leave that because I said it. You get the gist. Inferential stats are whenever you are making a prediction, putting probability on it. So, for instance, if I would say, like by the year, let's just say by 2020, we could say the population will be this size. So, by 2020, you would say based on population growth, the population of the U.S. will be and so on. And then you make a prediction. So there's 2 obvious ways of that. If you're looking at something and stating a fact, you're looking at something and they're making some kind of prediction. You want to see words like will, based on, something's increasing, decreasing. That will let you know which kind of stats it is. So yeah. A couple other things are discrete and continuous. Well, if we look at, they ask variables that are discrete and continuous. Discrete are things that have a 0 that you can count. So, like if I said, the number of students in my class, or, the number of students in my class will decrease over a semester, the number of students that come to a tutoring session, things like that. Continuous, these are things that would have fractions and decimals. So, for instance, any kind of measurement, sometimes, measurements fall into this category. For anything, you can come up with measurements for doing a project, for wood, or for, medicine that you're giving someone, things of that nature, okay? So if you're looking at something and you can only have whole numbers, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, in that range of numbers or variables here, that's going to be discrete. If you have something where you can have fractions and decimals between it, that is an example of